Okay, everybody, why don't we go ahead and get started? Anybody that comes online a little late, they'll just join us. And yeah, I'd like to welcome you to today's SCORE workshop. It's Introduction to QuickBooks Online, and it's sponsored by Smart Change Services. My name is Jerry Smith. I'm a SCORE mentor and the workshop team leader for the Piedmont chapter. I'll be monitoring the chat and the Q&A throughout the webinar. So if you have any questions, just please ask and we'll do our best to get them answered as we go along. Anybody who's not familiar with SCORE, we're a nonprofit organization, resource partner for the SBA, and we're actually 100% volunteer based. SCORE basically has two main areas of focus. What we're mostly known for is one-on-one mentoring, and that's provided by experienced business owners and executives. And the other is our educational workshops, such as today's event. And really the bottom line message is that SCORE is here to help local small business any way we can. If you'd like to get some more information, really the best place to go is our website at piedmont.score.org. So I'd like to introduce our presenter, Janelle Berry. Janelle started as a bookkeeper at her dad's business when she was just 15 years old. And over the last 2 decades, she has helped hundreds of small businesses and nonprofits succeed. She's the owner of Smart Change Services and has been a certified QuickBooks Pro Advisor for 14 years. I'm looking forward to hearing what Janelle has to present to us today on QuickBooks. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Janelle.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar on QuickBooks Online. I'm excited to share with you today just what an awesome tool this is. As Jerry shared, I've been doing QuickBooks now for over 14 years and have found that it's a really incredible tool for a lot of small business owners. We work with hundreds of them throughout the community. And the beauty of QuickBooks is that it can be customized based on what your needs are. So we'll be covering quite a few topics today. What my goal is today is that you're going to have a basic understanding of how to use QuickBooks Online and how it's going to benefit your company. I don't know if you know, but most small businesses struggle in the beginning years, and having an advisor along their side that can help them understand their financials and help them understand how to use their financial software really can be a make or break for small businesses. So whether you reach out to SCORE or whether you reach out to me or another supporter, an advisor in the community, when it comes to your bookkeeping services, it's highly recommended. And I hope today will just give you a taste of what it is that you can do with your financial software, but also where you might have questions and where you might want to seek advice. So the first topic we're going to cover today is QuickBooks Online. What are the benefits of using QuickBooks Online versus QuickBooks Desktop? This is a question we get asked quite a bit. QuickBooks Desktop is the primary tool that QuickBooks came out with many, many years ago. And as a pro advisor, it took a long time for us to shift over to wanting to use an online tool. The software is very different. If you're used to using QuickBooks Desktop, there's a bit of a learning curve, but I don't want to discourage you. It is worth the switch. Most of my clients now are using primarily QuickBooks Online. I would say well over 95% of my clients use this software versus the desktop. The reason being is it's accessible anywhere. You can actually use it from an app on your phone. You can accept transactions from your bank, which we'll go over today, straight from your phone. You don't have to connect software together. You don't have to give different people access from different locations. Everything is web-based. So if you can log into the internet, you can get to your QuickBooks Online. And we'll talk about user permissions as well as time goes on. But it is just such a dynamic tool, and it continues to grow daily. There's also a variety of different versions that you can use, which we won't be going over today. But as just a quick note, I would recommend QuickBooks Essentials as your basic starting point. Do not use QuickBooks Self-Employed. It is not a very good piece of software, and it's not transitionable from QuickBooks Self-Employed to their Essentials or Plus version. And so you end up having to start over. Most people don't know that and kind of get stuck. They get caught by that cheap price on the self-employed and then kind of get stuck along the way. So let's talk about what it looks like to navigate. We're going to actually use a QuickBooks desktop or a QuickBooks Online test drive company today. I'm not going to get into it in the first couple of topics here. We're going to just go and use the slideshow that we have presented, but then we will open that test drive company. So if you happen to have two screens and you're able to watch this webinar and open the test drive company, you may want to do that if it's not distracting for you, or you may even want to use this after this webinar ends if you just want to tool around for yourself without signing up for QuickBooks Online if you don't have it already. So take a moment here, jot down this quick connection. So it's qbointuit.com redir/test drive, and that's how you would get to their test drive sample company so that you can tool around. The concept is that they've developed something with some data in it so that we can manipulate it around and get comfortable with it without worrying about, one, paying for it, and two, having no data that won't tell us what we want. So we'll tool through that a little bit later. All right. So in the beginning, if you were to set up your own QuickBooks Online company, it's going to throw you through what's called the setup wizard. It's going to ask you about your business. What is the name of your business? It's going to ask you to choose what type of business you are. I'm going to turn on my highlighter here so I can tool around on this page a little bit. See if we can get, there we are. All right, so it's going to ask you to describe a little bit about your business, and it's going to try to help determine who you are and what matters, because QuickBooks has some preset chart of accounts and preset tools that it will implement based on the information that you give it. It's going to ask you some basic tools. Would you like to send and track invoices, organize your expenses, manage your inventory, so on and so forth? Who are you? It wants to know who's running this QuickBooks software right now, because it's going to use its automated intelligence to present the information to you based on who you are and what your needs are. If you don't know the answers to these questions, it's okay. You're not going to turn on or off any features that cannot be turned on or off at a later time. And we'll talk about turning on and off features here in a moment. So the basic QuickBooks Online interface looks like this. You're going to have a left side dashboard that's going to give you different options. You're going to have a new button and a search button, and we'll talk through a little bit more about how each one of those works. But this is a basic picture of the QuickBooks main page. All right, so we're going to start by going into the gear icon, because this is our setup space. In the upper right-hand corner of that dashboard page, as you could see, there's a gear icon here. If we click it, it's going to take us into a list of options. So we have our company with accountant settings, manage users, custom form styles, chart of accounts, and QuickBooks Labs. So we'll follow through the first options here in that listing. If we click on accountant settings, this is where we set up the basics of our company. So this is really where you want to go first in setting up your QuickBooks company. If you click on the company tab, it'll take you into where you describe your company. What is the company name? If there's a legal name that's different, you would want to enter it there. Putting in your EIN or social security number is only beneficial if you're using QuickBooks to prepare any kind of tax forms. If you are not, that is not needed if it's not something you're comfortable with providing at this point. It will ask you what tax form is needed. Now, this may be something that you don't know. Primarily, most companies are going to file what is called a 941 if they have employees. If you're a brand new company that's an LLC that's just starting out, you are more than welcome to leave this blank. Again, if you set up payroll through QuickBooks, which we'll talk about a little bit later, then it's going to pre-fill some of this for you. QuickBooks is trying to position itself as a tax submitting software in the end goal. They're not there yet, but they're beginning to put in features that are going to basically create a corporate tax return in time. Not quite there. The company email is important. It's going to pre-fill based on when you signed up for QuickBooks. When you log into QuickBooks, you'll use your company email and then a password that you've created. If there is a customer-facing email that's different, then you can put it here. The reason why they ask for it is on your invoices or any information that goes to the client. If there's an email field for it, then you can have actually one that's different than you if you don't want it to be you. A lot of people will use info@theircompany.com. Company phone number, same thing. This is going to be used to pre-fill the forms that are created further down the road. Website, same thing here. Company address, same thing. This comes into play as being super important when we're filing tax forms again, if we're using the payroll software primarily. So this could all be left blank and everything would work just fine, but you'll notice on your invoicing in particular, you'll end up with some blank fields. So go ahead and take a few moments when you set up your company to just jot in the information that's important. So the next tab in that list is sales. This is where you go and preset the different features that you want to use in QuickBooks. So you can customize any form in QuickBooks to look like you want it to look. We're not going to go over that in depth today, but just know that that's there. It has a preset content of what you want your invoice terms to be. If it's net 30 due on receipt, you can preset that here. You can also set it on every invoice if it's different based on the customer. You can set it also in the customer profile based on who your customer is, but there is a way to kind of set it across the board in this area. You'll notice there's a variety of different options that you can preset here. We're not going to go over each one, but I just want to show you that there is the ability to customize your sales features to your customers. The next tab that you would see in that list is expenses. So bills and expenses, this is all under the company setup field still. We haven't moved, but it's just kind of going step by step. Bills and expenses. So you could show different items. You can track your expenses and items by customer. That's often asked. Can I job cost, depending on your field? If you are a contractor, if you do project-based work, this is something that's really great that you may want to turn on. It comes turned off, but there is a very high level of detail that could be collected from QuickBooks Online. And it may be something that you don't choose to do now, but may want to do after the first of the year or after your company is a year old. You can toggle this on when you're ready. You can also make expenses and items billable. If you happen to be a cost plus type company where you bill your clients based on materials with a markup, you could do that here and have it preset. Whether or not you want to use purchase orders, it comes preset off, but you can turn those on. All right, QuickBooks Payments. This is also in the company setup. QuickBooks offers a merchant service account to anyone who has QuickBooks Online based on credit. So you are welcome to sign up for a merchant service account. What is awesome about QuickBooks Online and having a merchant service account through QuickBooks Online is that you can send invoices directly to your customers from QuickBooks and they can pay by, there'll be a green button. QuickBooks is infamous for its amazing green buttons that will be available right on that invoice. It'll say, you owe this company X amount of dollars, click here to pay. And then QuickBooks will collect the money for you and distribute it to you without having to go through a third-party merchant service company. The merchant service fees are pretty comparable to Square, to most credit card processing features. QuickBooks also offers the option of asking your clients to pay by ACH, and you can actually toggle that feature to where you could force all of your clients to pay via ACH or pay via credit card, depending, or choose between the two, depending on what your desires are and how you would like to navigate your fees. QuickBooks has recently begun charging 1% for ACH payments. So you're going to pay on average between 2.5% and 3% for credit card processing. ACH would be 1%. Okay, and you would just click the Learn More button and it would take you through a merchant processing application. All right, advanced settings. This is one area that we do want to go to when we set up our company, just to make sure that some things are in place that are preset normally in QuickBooks that are helpful for most entrepreneurs in the beginning stages. So the accounting method that QuickBooks likes to preset to is accrual. Most use a cash basis. Quick explanation of the difference between accrual and cash is that accrual basis is reporting taxes based on what you have billed out and the bills that you owe. So this might come in handy for a construction company that is invoicing their clients out, has invoiced them for the sale of a home that they will build in time. But right now they're busy collecting all the materials to build further down the road. So there's a little bit more of a time space that fits in that you bill up front and then you buy all the materials up front, but the work happens over the course of time. Most larger companies with high inventory will use an accrual feature. Most service-based businesses will use cash basis. I would say we work primarily with service-based companies, and I would say most companies that I run into in the community are cash basis. If you have any questions, you're welcome to ask your accountant a little bit more about that. But if you don't issue bills that are, or invoices that are due 30, 60, 90 days out to your clients, and you're really asking for payment either prior to providing what it is that you sell or within a very short time period, you're going to be cash basis. So feel free to toggle that. On all your reporting, you'll have the option of toggling as well, but go ahead and change that to cash basis if that's what you are. A couple more key things here is track classes, track locations. This gives you the ability to track information a little bit more segmented. So if you have multiple locations and you would like to see your sales or your expenses based on the location, you can turn this feature on and then tag every transaction to the proper location and create a profit and loss statement and a balance sheet based on those locations individually or see them compared side by side. Same concept with classes. Classes tend to come into play now a little bit more in the nonprofit sector when you do fund-based accounting. That may not mean anything to you if you're not in the nonprofit sector, but if you are, you'll understand what that means. Or if you're a church, classes is a great way to track that fund basis to know how much have I brought in this fund and how much have I spent out. In previous days, classes could also be used for jobs, but there's many more features now available in QuickBooks Online that we would never use classes again these days for job tracking. There's other features available. One of them being this here, which is a new feature in QuickBooks Online. It's about maybe a year and a half old, called projects. And you'll see that in our left dashboard that I'll show you again. We won't go into depth of how projects works today, but I want you to know this feature is here, especially if you're in the construction industry or you do project-based billing. Projects is a great way to track the progress of your project, to track your job costing, both labor and materials to a particular project. This is also great if you tend to sell to the same company or the same customer, but you sell them different projects. Maybe you are in construction and you built a house for someone and they ask you a year later to come back and build a garage. You can track that project individually, which is great. So those are the primary things that I wanted to point out here. One last one is they do offer time tracking. You'll see when we get to payroll what my recommendations are there. All right. This is just leading us through in a little bit more detail. So I'm going to skip through this. I'm going to pause for just a moment and see if there are any questions here in the chat in regards to what we've covered so far.
Not yet, Janelle. I think that we got quite a few people in attendance. I think everybody's just sitting back and trying to absorb it all. And no, it's great, but nothing in the queue so far. Thanks.
Okay, great. Okay, so in the same area that we have been talking about under your company, you'll notice that there is a manage user section. As I spoke about before, you are able to toggle on or off the user ability based on what you would like to see. So you may have someone that you would like to create invoices for your company, but you don't want them to see your banking data. You can do that. Maybe you have someone that you want them to be able to see all the things and prepare the reports for you, and you can toggle on and off what it is that you want them to do. So you would simply invite them to QuickBooks based on their email address, and then you can set the type of user that they are here below. You'll notice that there is a time tracking only feature if you were to use QuickBooks Payroll. So you could have them where they could not see anything that has to do with your financials, but only use it for time tracking. There's also a tab here that you'll notice that there's an accounting firm tab. For instance, all of our clients invite us as accounting firm. It gives us access to their QuickBooks data, and we're able to do what we need to do in the books without interrupting what they're doing. We can both be logged in at the same time. This is true of all users. You could have 10 users logged in at one time, all manipulating data in QuickBooks, using it in different ways. There is no interruption unless you happen to be on the same transaction, which if you are and you're changing it and one of your employees is changing it, there will be a warning message for whoever clicks the button last. And then you'll just have to remake your changes. So that's really the only multi-user functionality that may be a limitation, but it happens so rarely. When you're setting up users, just be aware that you do get 5 billable users usually included in your basic plans. And as you see the plans as they're presented, it'll explain that to you. Once you get over that many, you will be charged additionally for each user. If you need over 10 users, you will have to pay for an advanced version, much like the desktop, where you get pushed into enterprise if you need too many users. Most companies never need that.
Hey, Janelle, I got a quick question on the various users and the accounting firm. If they're invited in as the accountant, I would imagine you're going to have access to all of the data to compile and to look at. But the actual banking and transferring of money, are those functions separated so that there can be controls there?
So the bank account is connected to QuickBooks, but I can't do anything in QuickBooks that would cause an effect in the bank account itself. So I couldn't physically move any money. Now, could I change a transaction to where it appears different than maybe it was originally entered? Absolutely. But you would likely only invite your accountant with intention. Most accountants, if they are your tax filer, they're not going to change data in QuickBooks. If they're your bookkeeper, then you want them to change data in QuickBooks, but it does give them absolute full use of QuickBooks.
Gotcha. So they can manipulate everything within QuickBooks, but the actual sending of money is still a separate function that somebody on the administrative side. Okay, great. Thanks for the clarification on that.
Yes. And actually, there's no ability to move money in real life out within QuickBooks. There's no function of that. There are third-party softwares that you can partner with to send bills out and pay bills via QuickBooks through a third party, but that is an actual separate software.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, custom forms and styles. We talked about this a little bit in the beginning. This is just going to be a quick overview of the ability to change that. So you can add your logo to your invoices. You can change the way that they look. If you like a contemporary look on your invoices, you can change that. If you want certain data to appear on your invoices, you can change that. Some companies that we work with will talk about, I want you to ship this product always to this location. Maybe they have a separate shipping warehouse. You can customize your forms to have that information pre-filled every single time, so it doesn't have to be entered every single time. You can also preset, if you are one who ships to other companies, you can preset their shipping information. That would be inside of the customer information area. Okay, chart of accounts. So the way I like to describe the chart of accounts is this is the backbone of your company. If we've worked with quite a few chiropractors, so this kind of comes into play. Chiropractors are big about believing that if the spine is in alignment, then the rest of the body can be healthy. It actually applies here. If your chart of accounts is in alignment and set up well, the rest of QuickBooks is going to be healthy and it's going to operate well as long as things are being categorized properly back to the chart of accounts. If your chart of accounts is not set up properly, this is where you will make a mess of your books. QuickBooks does set up a chart of accounts for you based on the information that you gave in that very first window that we that we looked at, what your industry is. It's going to begin to make assumptions of what accounts that you need. One thing that we like to do for our clients is highly customize the chart of accounts. Because if you put in information into the chart of accounts, it's going to come back out on your profit and loss and your balance sheet, and it's going to tell you things. So one of the things that we always like to encourage is that our clients will think about what the type of revenue streams are that they might like to track. Do you sell, for instance, we're a bookkeeping company, but we also do advisory work. I want to know how much revenue is coming into my company based on bookkeeping that we do and based on advisory. So I would have two income accounts, one called bookkeeping income and one called advisory income. And then I allocate that on my invoices so that I know how much revenue I'm making in either vein. And so you might want to take a moment and think about that. What types of revenue and services or products do I sell that I want to track? And that would be appropriate to set up here in your chart of accounts. You'll notice there's a new button here, and that is where you would go about doing that. Another piece to think about is cost of goods sold. So this is an area that sometimes creates a little bit of confusion for new business owners in particular. What in the world is the difference between cost of goods sold and expenses? The simplest way to explain it is a cost of goods sold is anything that is directly related to your revenue. So having an office is not directly related to your revenue. You're going to have that office whether you have 1,000 customers or whether you have one. If you've chosen to have an office, that's overhead. It doesn't directly affect any revenue that you make. It might, in some very intrinsic terms, if you have a fancy office, maybe you get more customers, but it's not a direct cost. However, if you sell trinkets, you're going to buy 1,000 trinkets with the hopes of selling 1,000 trinkets. And so that would be a direct cost. If you hire a contractor who's going to help put those trinkets together because they came in multiple pieces, you're going to attribute that cost to a cost of goods sold because you're not going to ask that person to come put together trinkets if you're not selling them. If they're not selling well, you're not going to ask that person to come in and produce labor for you. Now, you may have someone who's sitting in your office who's your admin, and you're going to pay them probably no matter what. You still need someone to answer the phone, and you still need someone to answer your emails or whatever the assignment might be. That is not a direct cost because they would show up and come to work regardless of whether you have 1,000 customers or whether you have one, depending on the stage of your business. Obviously, there's business decisions that need to be made. If you went from 1,000 to one, you'd probably let that admin go. But in the direct cost to your business and knowing whether or not it's a cost of goods sold, it really is one-to-one. I buy the trinket, I sell the trinket. I hire the person to put together the trinket. Versus I hire someone to do just a general job that really doesn't directly affect my revenue. I would like to pause for just a moment. This is one category that often does have questions. Is there anyone that has any questions on that or needs clarification based on their industry?
I haven't seen anything on the cost of goods here, Janelle. So
Okay.
nope, I think we're good so far. I have a feeling that the questions will probably all roll in at once everybody's got a chance to absorb it. So nothing.
Great. Okay. So now we are in the section we're still up in the gear icons, still in the company setup section. Now we're in lists. This is where you're able to set up your product and services. So back to the conversation about my company, because it's just easiest to use as an example. On those invoices, when I bill my clients and I bill them for bookkeeping or I bill them for advisory, I want to set up an item that's going to then tell that from the invoice directly to my chart of accounts where it should go. And so I would set up a service that was called bookkeeping services, and then it will directly attribute to the bookkeeping income account. If I set up an advisory services item, then that will attribute to, because I'll tell it to attribute to the advisory income account. Same thing of if you sell a product, same type of idea here where you might want it to attribute to cost of goods sold. If you sell trinkets, there's an expense associated with that trinket that every time you sell it, there needs to be an adjustment in the books. Products and services, they do a pretty good job of leading you through how to set it up. Again, we're available. You may find someone else who's an advisor in the area that's available to help detail that down for you if you run into any problems. Okay. All right. So we've gone through your company, we've gone through lists, and then tools is the third list that we have here. You really won't use this. I never find myself coming to the gear icon and then to tools to pick most of these things, but there are some great things here in the beginning stages. You'll notice that there's an import desktop data feature here. If you're currently using QuickBooks Desktop, you can import your data into QuickBooks Online. That is how you would go about it. It's a little bit tricky. You do need Internet Explorer to get it done, but that's where you would go. It will actually ask you as well when you're setting up QuickBooks Online for the first time, do you want to bring in QuickBooks Desktop data? And it would actually lead you through at that point. So you probably would not come here after the fact. You'll notice Reconcile is here. We'll be using it from a different area of QuickBooks, but budgeting is one I do want to point out. It is only available in the Plus and in the Plus or Advanced versions. Budgeting, in case you do have a company where you do want to forecast or budget out and then compare what you did earn or spend against your budget. This is where you would go to set up that budget initially. Okay.
Quick question on that, Janelle.
Yes.
I noticed there was a separate for the import for the desktop data, but then above that, it's just import data. So that I'm assuming that it's just rudimentary. People have some stuff in some spreadsheets or something. We want to try to get this populated. There's something there that'll assist with that.
Great question. So a lot of people will ask me, can I import all of my invoices from some random software that's, from the last year? Not necessarily if they're not integrated. Import data here works great for customer lists, vendor lists, any kind of list, but not necessarily transactions. So I'm glad you pointed that out. Import data really is used if you're not choosing, maybe you don't want to bring in your desktop data because it's a mess, but you do want to bring in that customer list so you don't have to re-enter it. You can do that via an Excel spreadsheet, via CSV through that tool. Yes.
Save a little bit of time anyway. So
yes.
That's good. Okay, thank you.
Great. All right, let me see here. Debating whether, okay, we're going to switch over here. I'm going to end the slideshow so I can find my my tool here, and we are going to come into this customized company now so that we can tool around a little bit more. I feel like it's going to be a lot more user friendly if we're not following the slideshow. So back to our basic dashboard that we come to in QuickBooks Online. We've been spending all of our time so far here in this gear icon. Now we're back to the left navigation bar, and you'll notice that there is this plus new tool. If we click on it, this is where we can find all of our information and different tasks that we want to complete in regards to customers, in regards to vendors, in regards to employees, and any kind of other things that we need to do. Customers and vendors, for the most part, these tools are also available through the customer and vendor sections here under sales and under expenses. But these are transactions that you would like to initiate, and you would come here to the new section. Bank deposit transfers, journal entries are all things that are only available through this area. So if you needed to create a bank deposit transaction, you would come here. Now, this is not physically depositing to your bank. This is more of telling QuickBooks, I deposited money and it was for this purpose. Transferring money, same thing. This is not actually moving money from one bank account to another. It is just telling QuickBooks, I moved money from one bank account to another. A journal entry is an accounting term that's used to enter information into the accounting software, but it was really developed back before QuickBooks was a tool, because accounting's been around forever. One thing that I like to tell clients is that keep in mind that QuickBooks is a bookkeeping software. It's not necessarily an accounting software, which kind of sounds funny, but most accountants are trained to do things through journal entries. However, QuickBooks is a transaction level software. So there is a transaction option for pretty much anything you would want to do in your bookkeeping. And it is encouraged that you use those transactions because QuickBooks has developed it in such a way that if you use the transaction level, you can search it any way, about 10 different ways to go back and find it, or to collect the data or summarize the data by using those transaction features. If you use a journal entry, you're entering kind of more of a outside transaction that is limited in data, and therefore QuickBooks won't pick it up in the same way it would if you, for instance, you can use a journal entry to enter a sale. Let's say you sold someone $50 worth of services. You could enter that through a journal entry and it would be appropriate and right per accounting terms. However, you wouldn't be able to find that sale or have the level of detail of what product you sold to that person through a journal entry. You would want to go ahead and put that into an invoice or into a sales receipt. So, but your accountant will talk about journal entries, and this is where it is found if one is needed to be entered. Oftentimes accountants will enter journal entries at the end of the year to make sure that your books do match your tax return. That is the sign of a great accountant. If you have an accountant and they're not necessarily entering journal entries at the end of the year, ask them about it. That is part of what needs to be done to make sure that your books are timely and do match your tax return. So most people don't know to ask for that or expect that, but that is a piece. They may ask you to enter it, which is always fun, but it should be entered to make sure both match. All right. We will detail through some of the things in that list here shortly. Jerry, can you please remind me of time? Do we have till 12:30?
Yeah, we have actually till 12:45, and I think it's fine if we run a couple of minutes over. So
Okay.
we've got plenty of time left. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so the next feature we're going to take a look at here is the search feature. This is a great tool in QuickBooks. If you need to know anything, come here. You'll notice the first thing that comes up is this list of recent transactions. I believe that learning anything, like riding a bike, one part of learning how to ride a bike is how to stay on, and one is learning how to fall off. So this is where you learn how to fall off a little bit. If you assign a transaction, which that'll mean something to you here in a few moments, but if you do something to a transaction or enter a transaction and you realize, oh man, I don't think I did that right, or oh, I meant to add a memo, or oh, I maybe entered it slightly wrong, come back here to the search bar and look at your recent transactions, because all of this is hyperlinkable. You can easily click into it and it is going to open the transaction for you, and you can edit the transaction at whatever level of detail you need to. Then you would just simply save and close it, and whatever edits that you've made will then be saved. But that's a really easy way to go back and find any transaction that you've touched recently. And you'll notice that there's 10 of them. So it's not really a matter of time. If you just touch 10 transactions today, then it'll show today. But if it's been over the course of some amount of time, you'll notice here that it can be over a varied amount of time. The search bar here, really, it's the grandness of its function is kind of based on the level of QuickBooks that you have. I tend to bypass this part because I don't like the way it searches. You could punch in like $123 and hit enter, and it will look for $123 transactions. Or you could put in a vendor name or a customer name, and it will draw up some information. I don't love the way that it does it. It's kind of a hit or miss, honestly, and I don't know why. So I tend to hit the advanced search button, which gives me a little bit more control over exactly what I'm looking for. So if I want to search all transactions for a certain amount for that $123, and I want it to be exactly $123, I can look for it that way. If I want to search by a display name, so that would be my customer or my vendor, I could punch that information in here. One that I use quite often is line description, because as we'll explain here in a moment, all of your transactions, because it's connected to your bank account, will come in via your bank. There will be a banking transaction that is matched to whatever transaction is in QuickBooks, or it may, if you haven't manually put the transaction in QuickBooks, there won't be a match. It'll just be initiated by your bank. And so line description is one that you can search whatever that little, when you look at your bank statement or you go online to your bank and you see they have that kind of encrypted bank description of QT, and then it has a bunch of letters and numbers. You could search using line description for QT and see every transaction that has that data in it. So I like using that as well. And that is the search feature. All right, let's come back out and talk about what it looks like to bill our customers. Here in the sales center is where you're going to function in all communications to your customers when it comes to collecting money. There's an overview, which as you put data in here, it will give you a little bit of a heads up of who owes you money, how old the money is, if you have any upcoming money coming in, if there's any invoices that are overdue, that will all appear here. The all sales feature is a list of anything and everything, any invoice that you've written, any payment that's been made in recent amount of time. You'll notice here that it's by date order. All of these fields, you'll notice this table type, Excel type feature appears all throughout QuickBooks. It is customizable, much like Excel is, in the way that if you see this down arrow, you can toggle it and it'll sort by date for you. You can sort by customer name, and it'll group all of the same customer together. You could sort by due date, you could sort by balance or by total or by status. So you'll see that. You can also click and drag the width of all of these columns just like you could in Excel. So if the information tends to run over, like this memo, you can click and drag it to make sure you can read everything that you need. Under the Invoices tab is where there's a listing of all the invoices that you have issued. So currently the status is set to all, the date is 12 months, and you'll notice that this is sorted by who's overdue. So these different clients are overdue, and this gives me some information. I have $1,500 worth of overdue invoices in the sample company. I have some that have yet to be deposited. I don't know that we'll get much into undeposited funds today, but out of those 1,500 that are overdue, we do have another $3,700 that we've invoiced out but haven't been paid for yet, but it's okay because they're not technically overdue just yet. And in a total, we have 5,200 that has been left unpaid. If I wanted to remind my customers to pay me, Barnett Design is now 10 days overdue, and I want to send them a reminder. That's available from this screen via the drop-down feature, where I can send them a reminder right from QuickBooks. So I've already sent them an invoice through QuickBooks, but now I want to bug them and just remind them that they owe me money. So I'll send a reminder, and you'll notice there's a pop-up screen that appears, and I can customize the email to say whatever it is that I want to say. There's usually a preset email body back in the gear icon that we were in first. You can customize this to appear the same way every single time if you don't like what it says here, or you can change it time by time if there's custom things that you would want to say. Maybe you know Miss Barnett well, and you say, I know that you're waiting on payment from other invoices. Don't forget about us, or whatever it is that you might want to say to keep that customer relation alive. But this will email as if it emailed directly from whatever your email is that is connected to QuickBooks. You will not see it in your drafts of your email. So let's say you use Gmail. If you go to your Gmail drafts, you will not see it there. However, if they reply to you, it will come back to your email. But you'll notice it pulls a copy of the invoice right out to send again in case they missed it the first time, and just creates a simple reminder. Again, that button will appear for them if you have QuickBooks Payments set up, and so they can click on the button and pay you also through this reminder. Payment links is also available. oops. If you have the merchant services set up, you can send any customer a unique link to pay you with. That would appear here if the merchant services was already connected, and it's a generalized payment link. Here in your customer area, which you'll notice is also available, if you click on sales, it's going to behave for me here, is available here. You'll notice all of these are available in the drop down. This is where what would be called your customer home base. If you're familiar with desktop, you're used to having that little customer service center. So this is the same space here. You can search for any customer straight from this search field. So you could also scroll through if that works better for you. But if you have quite a few different customers, you can also type in their information and find it. You'll notice here, which is interesting, that Shara Barnett actually has a sub customer, and you'll notice that that's kind of an interesting feature, that you can sub customer customers. So kind of like we were talking about with projects, that if you build a house and build a garage, this might be that maybe you connect with someone and you sell, they might have multiple companies that you're selling to. So your main contact is Shara, but you sell to 2 different companies that she owns. So that could be a possible way to set up your customers. You'll also notice here under Amy's Bird Sanctuary, we have her address. We have Amy's Bird Sanctuary and Amy's Bird Sanctuary again, because we can set up a detailed level of information. So we've put in her name, her first and last name, her company. We want it displayed as a certain way. So this display name as is how your company will see it. I give all of the clients that I work with a 3-digit code so that I can easily find them, and they're kind of a summarized reference point for us. So I tend to name my companies with kind of the first letter of whatever their company name is. So I would cause my display name to be ABS, Amy's Bird Sanctuary, because I want to be able to see ABS and search by ABS at any given time. So that display name is only for you. That's all internal. The company name will appear on any other form as you type it in here. You can enter their billing address. You can enter notes about the customer. So you can semi-use this as a CRM home base. Tax info, if you have to collect tax, QuickBooks does track sales tax, and that can all be set up. I don't know that we're going to go over that in depth today, but that is a feature here in QuickBooks. Payment and billing, if there's a preferred payment method, like you always want them to pay via American Express or via a check, you can enter that there. What their terms are, back to that net 30 under the gear icon, where we set everybody at net 30, but let's say Amy is kind of notorious for not paying, so she needs to pay on receipt. We could set hers to override that net 30 for everyone and make sure that every time she gets an invoice, it's due on receipt. So that can be customized per client there. It's interesting, there's a language feature in here. Any attachments, so if you have contracts with clients that you set up, you could actually attach them here in QuickBooks and keep that under their customer profile. And then any other kind of additional info. QuickBooks does have a customer type feature where you can set them up if you type out your customers in certain ways. Like back to my bookkeeping advisory, I could type all of my advisory customers as advisory. I could type all of my bookkeeping clients as bookkeeping. Again, QuickBooks is available to you at the minimal summary level if you would like to enter that level of detail, or whether you want to know everything about everyone and down to the finite detail of every transaction, you can enter that as well. QuickBooks has a variety of different options that are available to you. The email that you enter here under the customer information is the email that QuickBooks is going to want to use anytime it emails out an invoice or any customer correspondence. So just keep that in mind. If it's not, so you might have Amy as your customer, but maybe Amy isn't the one to receive the invoice. Maybe it's her accounts receivable department. Make sure this email is set to the proper person. You can customize it when you go to send the form. If this time Amy does need to receive the invoice because it hasn't been paid in 60 days and you want to change it in the invoice, you can do that. There is a make inactive feature here. You will notice over time, there will be customers that come and go. And so when that customer is no longer with you, you can simply toggle them off here using the Make Inactive feature, and that will simply hide them from your list. It will not delete their information or any transaction related to them. It will just hide them so that you can't see them unless you choose to. If you would like to go back and see all of your customers that are hidden, you click on the small gear icon here, and you'll notice there's an Include Inactive option, which will then make them all visible. A heads up, this is available to you in the chart of accounts if there's accounts that you no longer use and decide to toggle off, available to you in the vendor feature as well. QuickBooks Online has chosen when you inactivate someone to use the words deleted in parentheses or in whatever those are called. Don't be afraid. I don't understand why they do that. It is not deleted. You may see on your profit and loss or on your balance sheet an account that you decided you don't want to see anymore because you're just really not using it. But within that time period, there's still information available to you. You'll notice that it'll say deleted. It's not truly deleted. It's just hidden. So be aware of that. All right. I covered the chart of accounts fairly well in the beginning. I do want to go back there real quick just to give you an idea of what some of the questions are going to be when you set up something on the chart of accounts. Here in the accounting tab of the dashboard under chart of accounts, this has never been looked at. You'll get some great graphics in the beginning days of using QuickBooks Online. That will kind of be prompts because they just want you to get familiar and to feel comfortable. So there's lots of great teaching tools already inside of QuickBooks Online. When you first purchase the software, there's going to be tutorials offered to you ongoing. So we're back here to the chart of accounts, what you saw on the slideshow earlier. You'll notice here, this person decided to set up design income, discounts given, landscaping services. This is technically a landscape company that they're using for their sample company. You'll notice they have their income for landscaping services broken down between job materials and labor, which might feel a little bit confusing. They're billing time and material. So if they purchase one bag of seed, they're going to charge their customer for that same bag of seed. And they want to know, did we do that? And then they'll be referenced back to the report. Same thing with labor. They're going to bill based on the installation and based on maintenance and repair. And those of you who do sell product, this is an important thing in the way that you don't want to charge sales tax on your services, but you do have to charge sales tax on any tangible thing that you sell. So that's why this being broken down in that regard is important as well. And back to the concept of the products and services, it's all done at that product and service level, not here in the chart of accounts. So when we get to expenses, QuickBooks is going to preset a chart of accounts for you here as well. It will break down things as it feels like it makes sense. I want to click on I want to start a new one just so you have an understanding of how to set it up. So if you want to set up a new expense account, this is how you would go about it. I click the new button here. I'm going to make my account type and change it down, scroll down to expenses. The detail type is going to be, again, remember how I talked about this eventually wanting to be a tax software. The detail type comes into play there. If you ignore this, and let's say we're going to set up office rent, it's not advertising and promotional. If I ignored this and left it as advertising and promotional, it's not going to hurt a thing because you're not going to use this as tax software. It's not ready yet. But if you are someone who's very particular and you like it to be exactly what you think it should be, then you can come down here to rent or lease of buildings. There's a variety of options. My point is, don't stress about this particular option. One does have to be chosen. It really does not affect how QuickBooks operates at this time. QuickBooks carried over the idea of rent or lease of buildings because that's what I chose, but I want to call mine. I have 2 offices. So I want to call this one Woodruff Road office rent. My point here is be as detailed as you want. You want your reports in the end to come out in a way that you would understand them. What we don't want to do here, though, is say, let's say I want to create an office supplies category. I could say office and general administrative expenses. What I don't want to put here is Staples or Office Depot or Office Max. We don't want to see a vendor name in there. Or let's say it was a contractor. We don't want to see Bob Smith here. We want to see what he is doing. So maybe he is a, I'm trying to think, an administrative laborer, or maybe a landscape laborer. We can put things like that there, but we don't necessarily want to see people's names or vendors' names on our chart of accounts. It's just not the best way to set it up, because we can find Bob Smith a million other ways in QuickBooks. We can look right under his vendor profile and see all of that information there. So here we would say, okay. And then we would simply, if you wanted to create a description, you could do that there. Again, not necessary. A sub account is the ability, I don't know if you guys can see this super clearly, but you see truck and then you see depreciation and original cost. Truck is the parent account, depreciation and original cost is the sub account. So let's say I wanted to put these office supplies under, we call them incidentals, and I'm not going to spell it right, but we call them incidentals when we group our clients' accounts together, because they're just kind of the cost of doing business in general. And we like to group those. So you can group expenses as well using QuickBooks. I'm going to actually choose to hit cancel. That is a very basic overview of the chart of accounts and setting up an expense. One piece that will need to be set up in the very beginning is setting up your checking account. It's already set up here. But again, when you're ready to set up your checking account and connect QuickBooks, you would want to come here to the chart of accounts, choose new, and choose account type bank. We would choose if it's a checking or a savings. If you happen to have petty cash, you could use cash on hand. But let's say it's checking. I like to set up all of my checking and savings accounts with some more reference than just general checking. If I bank at Southern First, I may choose SF or spell out Southern First, and I would say checking. And then I like to use the last 4 digits of my checking account so that I can easily reference it. What makes this beautiful is if you have multiple checking accounts that you're transferring money between, or just need to reference in general, if you enter those last 4 digits, you can actually search by those last 4 digits as well. So, because a lot of times it's going to appear in your bank detail, just 4 digits, that's all it's going to tell you. And if you have Southern First checking 1 and Southern First checking 2, you're going to have to remember which one was which again. But if we put it right here in the name, then we can search for it and match it easily. Okay. All right, so let's go back to products and services just to have a little bit clearer of an overview of how to set those up. So if we come back to sales and product and services, this is where we find that finite detail of what it is that we sell. And when we want it to appear on our invoices, this is how we set it up. So again, this is a landscape company. So we see that there's a lot of different things that they sell: gardening, installation, maintenance, and repair. And then we notice that they have some sprinkler heads and pipes in inventory. So you can track inventory fully in QuickBooks Online. That used to not be a great feature of QuickBooks Online. It has come quite a long way. And as long as you're not a giant manufacturing company or you're selling tens of thousands of products, especially different types of products, QuickBooks Online will be sufficient for you. If you happen to be a manufacturing company, or you have to put together a lot of different parts or pieces to create what you sell, QuickBooks Online may not be enough. But if you simply buy a product and sell it, and it's pretty much the same product, maybe you sell t-shirts and you sell a variety of colors and a variety of different sizes, QuickBooks Online is sufficient for you. And to set up an item, again, you're going to see that you have a new button here and you get a variety of choices. So is this an inventory item? Is it a non-inventory item? Is it a service item, or is it a bundle? So the bundle is the idea that I take multiple things and I group them together and sell them as one thing. So maybe I sell t-shirts, but you have to buy them in a package of 10, or otherwise I'm not going to sell them. So rather than selling that one t-shirt with a quantity of 10, I sell a bundle of t-shirts, as one. Services is services that you provide, just like we talked about before. This landscape company sells lawn maintenance, but it also sells sprinklers. Sprinklers, we would choose inventory. Lawn maintenance, we would choose service. Non-inventory is any products that you would like to track, but you don't want to have them in inventory. Inventory is a feature in QuickBooks that you have to be diligent about. Don't choose inventory if you're not willing to do the work, because you're going to tell QuickBooks, I have 100 of these things that I just bought, and QuickBooks is going to take one away every time you sell it, or however many you sell in a grouping. And then you're going to end up with 25 at the end of the year. Let's say you sold 75, or you told QuickBooks through invoicing that you sold 75, and it says, well, you have 25 of those left. And you look in your inventory and you have 0 left because you haven't been diligent on one side or the other. So just be aware of that. Inventory is important if you do have an accrual basis accounting, or if you carry a high volume of inventory, it's worth the diligence and it has the ability to do it. But if you don't want to be concerned about that, or it's too complicated because of the industry you're in, you can choose to track product and just choose non-inventory so that you don't have to worry as much in a high level of detail, everyone that comes in and everyone that goes out. You may just not be at that place yet, and that's okay. So there's a variety of features here. I'm going to choose service just to show you how to set it up real quick. Back to the concept, let's pretend this was my company. I'm going to say it's called Bookkeeping Services. Whatever I put in this box is going to be what appears on the invoice. So I want to make sure that it's something that's professional and that is easily understood by my clients. The category here is unimportant. You could choose a higher level of detail here, not important. If you happen to have a SKU, you can track inventory even down to the SKU. You can buy different software that will allow you to scan all of your products into QuickBooks Online. There is an unlimited amount of features here available to you. But let's say my bookkeeping services, and then I wanted to have a description next to it so that my customers can see it. So I sell this product and service to my customers. And next to the description line, maybe I want to say billed hourly. That will also now appear on the invoice every single time. I can delete, I can edit it in the invoice feature. This just saves me some work if every single time I find myself typing billed hourly when I create an invoice. My sales price and rate is going to be what pops up automatically. Again, can be changed when I create the invoice. Let's say I bill at $1 an hour. And my income account, now this goes back to the chart of accounts. This is where I want to be able to tell QuickBooks, I want you to cause it to show up here in my chart of accounts on my reporting. Now, we talked about this before, is that I don't want it just to be grouped under services because I sell bookkeeping and advisory. So I'm going to create, it'll do it here for me. Oh, it's going to get confused because it has a bookkeeper expense account. So I'm going to call it bookkeeping income. And notice here that I can actually add this straight from this feature. I don't have to be in the chart of accounts to do that. So if I click add, it's going to bounce me back straight to that space that we just worked on in the chart of accounts, and I can detail out whatever it is that I want it to be from here. It is an income account. The detail is it's a service or fee type of income and bookkeeping income. And then I would just choose save and close. Sales tax category. Services are not taxable, so I would choose non-taxable. Otherwise, it will try to collect 6% on all of those. If it's a item you're selling, you would need to choose that. Now, purchasing information. There's a double-sided feature to every product and service in QuickBooks, meaning back to the trinket idea, if I buy a trinket and I sell a trinket, I want to track that at the same time. As a little higher level accounting explanation, I'm going to give a super quick overview, but when I buy a product under inventory, if I buy 1,000 trinkets at $1 a piece, those are going to be on my balance sheet as an asset because they're not sold yet. I've not collected any revenue. And I could turn around and offload that product to someone else if I close my business down tomorrow, or if I sell my business tomorrow. That gives me a value of what inventory I have on hand and how much my company is worth. So I want to keep that on my balance sheet. I don't want to expense that yet because they are not sold. But when I sell them, I want to move those from my balance sheet because they're not an asset anymore. I don't own them. They're not in my inventory. I've now shifted that to my customer, but I need to shift that $1 in inventory that I purchased that product for over to my cost of goods sold to say, now that dollar becomes an expense and it's deductible because that was a cost of doing business. So QuickBooks in the product and service feature gives you the ability to do that at the time of sale if it's set up properly. If we come back here and we call this trinket, and I'm not going to provide a description, we're going to sell our trinkets for $2. We bought them for $1. We'll call it trinket sales, income, sales of product income. We're going to call it trinket sales. These are going to be taxable because I'm selling a product. And then I'm going to choose this button here where it says I purchased this product and service from a vendor. So I purchased them for $1. My expense account is actually going to be trinket. I might call it trinket cost of goods sold. As just an example. My account type would be cost of goods sold. It's not labor. It is actually going to be supplies and materials, trinket cost of goods sold. Getting close. And I could even put in my preferred vendor here. So if I always bought my trinkets from ABC company, I could put that here. But what's going to happen is if I do both sides of this, when I set up my product, it's going to move that $1 from the asset over to the cost of goods sold. I would hit save and close and then sell it on my invoice. To show how that works on an invoice, I'm going to do a new invoice. We're going to sell, oops, it's funny. These are those pop-ups that I was telling you about. Now it's going to try to be super helpful for us. Hold on just one moment. See if I can bypass there. Okay. So we're going to sell Amy's Bird Sanctuary. Notice that her name pops up, that email that we had in her customer setup, her terms, and the invoice date is going to preset to today. We could move that out if we needed to. 30 days from today is September. And I'm going to sell her. I don't think the sample company will save properly. We'll have to sell her a sprinkler head. The quantity you can change, the rate you can change. So we're selling her one sprinkler head at $2. We could sell her 20 sprinkler heads at $20. However you want to go about it. You can toggle on and off the sales tax. You can even offer discounts. Let's say Amy is one of our best clients and we want to offer her a 10% discount. It will actually build it in here. If we're having to, she's in California, we're having to charge her California sales tax at 8%. You'll notice that is added up here. If you sell to multiple different states or you sell to multiple different counties in South Carolina has an amazing sales tax system where every single county has a different sales tax rate. You can set those up and notice there's an add new button here. You can set up right inside the invoice and toggle those as needed. You'll notice that there's a balance due and we can have a message on the invoice again in that gear icon. You can preset this to be the same thing every time. You can always customize it. You can also set these invoices to send later. If you don't want to send it now, you could set it to send on Monday morning at 9 o'clock. You can also create a reoccurring invoice. Let's say you are a service provider that is a coach. Or for instance, our bookkeeping services, we bill on the 1st of every month. It's reoccurring. So we could create a reoccurring invoice where you bill your customer X amount of dollars on X day every single time for whatever duration you want it to be. So that's also available to you here. I'm going to pause. I see that there's quite a bit going on in the chat. Let me know if there's any questions, Jerry.
Well, I think we've got a few like general questions. Do you want to start moving into like a Q&A mode?
Sure.
All right. So I think one was a little bit more of a comment as you were going through on the customer side, and she was asking about the inactive and notice the active button. And to me, it just sort of brought up the whole idea that it seems like the data is just always there. Regardless, it was customer transaction, is that there's going to be a history there's no really going in and deleting stuff per se. It's creating inactive. Am I getting that right? So
yes,
it's sort of like a real trail that sort of stays with the system, and you don't go in like in a spreadsheet and delete lines and stuff like that. It just, there's ways to filter it with this inactive type functionality. Okay.
Correct.
So I think that was good, and she picked up on that as you went through it. I'll sort of do a generalized version, then give you the specific version of this, but the generalized question would be just guiding them towards, what version of the software. And the specific question is, they're in the real estate industry and plan to use for one of the two of the lower priced options. And won't be selling products, only inputting income and expenses, managing income tax payments, etc. In that particular case, which version, and then maybe just your thoughts in general to guide them as to which version they may need.
Yes. So as I mentioned earlier, there are 4 different versions available. There's Simple Start, Essentials, Plus, and Advanced. 90% of the companies will never need Advanced. Simple Start is often too simple. You cannot integrate software. There's just a lot of limitation, which if you're really just trying to take your bank information and push it through QuickBooks and kind of sort it for tax purposes, and you're not trying to bill or collect through QuickBooks, Simple Start would work. But most people, I start at least at Essentials. The features are worth a few extra bucks a month, and it just has a lot more capability than Simple Start. And Simple Start tends to be a little bit clunky, in my opinion. I haven't even touched it in a long time because it just has created more problems than it's worth. So I would encourage, regardless of where you feel you might be, Essentials would be a great place to start. Simple Start is just too simple. Plus is going to be required anytime you want to integrate software. So that's another beautiful feature of QuickBooks Online. You can integrate with all kinds of different things. You can integrate with Square, you can integrate with your CRM, you can integrate with your shopping cart if you happen to be e-commerce, you can integrate with House Call Pro if you happen to be a service industry. There's a variety of different service or third-party softwares that you can integrate with, but Plus is required for that. One thing that we do offer that I wanted to make sure we mentioned, because I know we're basically out of time at this point, we do offer a wholesale discount for QuickBooks Online. So you'll notice when you go to qbo.intuit.com, there is an option to sign up for QuickBooks. They will offer you, I think, 50% off for the first 6 months, but then they kind of rake you over the coals in the end. Plus is $80 a month for their retail price. And I think they offer it right now for 40, 45, somewhere in there for the first 6 months. And then you pay full retail. And there's no way to get out of that once it's set up. At Wholesale, we're able, at this point, they just changed our pricing structure, but we're able to offer 20% off for the lifetime of the entire subscription. And we're happy. We normally extend that just to our clients, but we're happy to extend it to anyone here in the workshop today.
Oh, that's awesome, Janelle. Thank you. I guess if we just looked at Essential and Plus, is there an easy upgrade path? If somebody starts with Essential, can they, a year later click something and end up in Plus without a whole bunch of work to be done? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, you won't notice any. It is literally a click, and you'll just notice you have a lot more features than you had the day before.
Perfect. Okay. And a couple of more specific questions. I got a nonprofit and receives subscriptions through PayPal. And, is there really, I guess, is there anything special there? The PayPal fee and the deposits go into the checking account. In other words, basically, it would be the easiest way to track that.
Mhm. Whew, that's a good question. As a nonprofit, QuickBooks can actually distribute donation receipts for you. We work with a couple of different nonprofits who do receive funds through PayPal. We create what's called a sales receipt. I showed an invoice. A sales receipt looks identical, but it tracks at the time of sale. So instead of invoicing your donors, you just say this donor donated X amount on this day through PayPal. You would show that deposit into PayPal, and then there would be a movement of money. You can connect your PayPal to QuickBooks, which right now we're in the banking screen. So it will post every time someone gives money through PayPal, and then you can say this post was this particular person's donation. And then it'll post the fees as well right there in QuickBooks through the PayPal account. And then as you move money from PayPal into your main checking, that would be a transfer of funds. It would not need to be attributed to any one donor. You're just moving a chunk of cash from one place to the next. Does that answer the question?
I believe it does. I'll give a moment to see if they have anything else to follow through on that, but I thought it was a great response. The last question we have, and I'm sure we can't go into much detail, it was more of a general question about using it for using QuickBooks for payroll. And the question is really just a generic one of can it be used? And I can see right from your screenshots that there is a payroll function. Do you have any just general comments on the payroll functionality without going into
I do.
detail?
We didn't get to it, so I'm glad this gets brought up in a question. I've been a pro advisor for 14 years. I do not recommend QuickBooks Payroll to my clients. I just don't. There's just some limitations to the ability to grow with it, and the support is not great. You often end up kind of on a just not great support. It's a lot of frustration for what you end up with. I recommend Gusto to all of my clients. I love Gusto. I've had great success with Gusto. It's a smaller company. It has automation features. It's full service. So they actually collect all of the taxes. They submit all of the taxes. They do all of the 1099s at the end of the year. And they help you with setup. So, and it's very cost effective compared to QBO payroll. So that's what I recommend. And it is integratable with QBO. So it will actually, every time it produces payroll, will throw a transaction into your QuickBooks Online, which is great.
I'm not familiar with that company. That's great tip. So I'll check that
They
out.
also offer full HR as well. So depending on the level of need, Gusto really is a one-stop shop.
Gusto, Gusto.
Yes, Gusto.
Okay. All right, I'll check them out. Thank you. I think that covers the questions that were in the queue. And yeah, again, thank you so much for spending the time. I think it was extremely informative. You went in a short amount of time able to cover most of the features in the product anyway. So like you said, they can reach out to SCORE if they want to go through some more mentoring and bring them. And you've got your services on your side that can help people beyond this particular workshop if they need more help. Yeah, I think that's all from here. Any closing comments on your side, Janelle?
I do. One thing I didn't get to mention that is the key feature of QuickBooks Online is what's on the screen now, which is the ability to connect QuickBooks to your bank accounts and for your bank account to feed information into QuickBooks Online and for you to be allowed to accept transactions and assign them to your chart of accounts straight from what comes from the bank. It's on the screen now. We didn't get a chance to really delve into it, and it is really dependent on the client themselves, but the need for manual data entry has been pretty much eliminated through QuickBooks Online. There's so many automation features just from the screen alone that if you are a solopreneur and you're just starting out and it feels really overwhelming to do your bookkeeping, this feature will make it possible for you and will relieve a lot of that stress just by some simple key setup tools. And that is one of the things we help with as well. We do full bookkeeping services, but we also will spend an hour with you in a screen share like this, helping you customize QuickBooks for your company, teaching you how to use the banking queue, connecting your bank, and then setting you on your way until you need help again. So know that that's out there for you as well. I know SCORE is a huge help in a lot of areas, and we can be a support in that type of way. So we're happy to do that.
Oh, that's great. Okay, everybody, I think we're going to wrap up the workshop. Thanks again for taking the time, and I hope everybody got some good tips and information about QuickBooks Online. Thanks, Janelle, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody at another workshop. Take care.